after that, I just started working and I wanted it so bad, Jeremy. I didn't have a car back then. And I took a Greyhound bus to work the Kentucky Derby. That's how bad I wanted to work on the events. So I would literally if I had to, I'd take the Greyhound bus and I would just figure out a way to make it work. And then eventually, as time went on, I got better deals and got compensated more. But I got to tell you, I fell in love with it.
Join me, Jeremy Swick, on Into the Unknown, a podcast that delves into the personal journeys, stories, and experiences of individuals across diverse professions. As a historian by trade, I firmly believe that our personal histories shape our present and offer valuable insights into our paths ahead. With that being said, let's get into it. On this episode of Into the Unknown, I am joined with a very special guest, Annie H. Hoffman. How are you doing today, Annie?
Great. Thank you for having me, Jeremy.
Thank you for being a guest. I'm looking forward to it. It's been a long time in the making, and I'm just excited we get to talk for a little bit.
Yes, and I'm so sorry that it's taken us a while to finally connect, but grateful for this time and thank you for your interest in having me on your podcast.
Oh, 100%. As you understand, people are busy, lives happen, and it's one of those things where I do love the virtual world now that you can kind of reschedule, you can shift things around and just make it work.
I know it is great, right? Like what an incredible time for us to be alive.
It, it,
And
it really is. Kick off the show and talk about the importance of networking. How are we connected?
through Amon Green, one of my
Yes.
old media training clients, and now he is one of my talent clients. And I just absolutely love Amon. He's so great.
He absolutely is. It's one of those things I always appreciate being on both sides around athletes. Of course, as a fan growing up, but then in a more professional setting, it's really cool when people kind of are who you hope they are, and then they're even better than that in person.
Oh, he is one of the nicest humans. I just absolutely love him. And you almost forget how fierce he was on the football field because he's so down to earth and just so likable. And it's funny because I'll have people from my team on a call with him and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, Simon Green." They'll say he's like the nicest guy. He's like, they said, I almost forget that he's this incredible football player. I said, I know. He's just such a sweetheart. But quite honestly, Jeremy, I have found in all my years working with so many athletes that they're really so many great people, just like in the world. I mean, there's a lot of great people.
I couldn't agree more. And I think one of those things is, again, from both sides, is now working with people, you realize that they're humans. They have good days, they have bad days, and you might see a guy when you're working with him, 100 times. Of course, as fans, they might only see him for 2 seconds, and it might be a, unfavorable encounter. But overall, everyone's been pretty nice throughout this journey, to be honest.
Yeah, I've always found that because I started working in this when I was 18 years old, and I started working for ABC Sports and ESPN, and I found most people to be super gracious, super nice, and some of the biggest stars in the business have been incredible, which has always been funny to me because sometimes people have this idea that that would be opposite, and it's actually I found to be that a lot of them are incredible, and sometimes it's the people that you just come in day to day that could be difficult that are not in the public eye.
I couldn't agree more. I want to know that comic book issue number one, that origin story. Who are you?
I am a media trainer and I also do PR and I'm also a talent agent. So I do media training for athletes, executives, broadcasters that want to get to the next level, and then PR for everyone from authors to sports doctors to NFL players to therapists. So it's really quite the range, which I love. And then I'm also a talent agent, mostly for clients I've already media trained, such as Amon Green, who of course you know. And it's so fun because I love supporting them and helping them in their broadcasting careers. So it just kind of organically happened, but I didn't set out to do that. And of course, probably my favorite title is being a mother. I'm a mother of three kids.
Amazing. What got you into the sports field to begin with?
My uncle was an NFL coach, and growing up in Ohio, uh, I always would tell people when I was teaching at the NFL, I think we were too poor to take a vacation. So we'd often just go see Uncle Frank and at and then we'd go to training camp or we were around all that. And it just led to my interest in sports. I remember being a young girl asking my uncle all kinds of questions about coaching, about goal setting, about motivating people. And like you, as we were talking off camera, I was obsessed with reading sports biographies. It started in middle school. I'd read so many biographies, and I just fell in love with it. And I fell in love with the fact that people can come from anywhere and become, very successful and have this incredible life, and all through sports. And sports is really determined. It's pretty simple, right? It determines on how well you could do. And there's no other factors involved with your success. If you have the numbers, and depending on how you run the 40, depending how you show up at the game, you're going to go ahead and do well. And whereas in other parts of the world, I think, or other facets of life, we're not judged just on the bottom line of our results sometimes.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's one of those interesting things that was mentioned. We were both readers growing up. Is I realized pretty quickly I'm 5'6" on a good day, and I've been that height since about middle school. So I knew being a pro athlete probably was never going to be in the cards. But I learned so many other avenues into sports that I kind of started to gravitate towards, whether I realized it at the time or not.
Well, the other thing I think about sports, Jeremy, is that what I always loved about it was just it was always fascinating to me is what motivated someone. And maybe because I grew up in kind of a poor family, had to put myself through college and pretty much supported myself since I was in eighth grade. I always thought it was fascinating how someone can come from a family and just be super motivated and ambitious and do well. And that it didn't matter how they grew up or their background or what was going on in their family dynamics. And I think I really identified with that. It was interesting. I interviewed Deion Sanders many years ago, and he was saying, when I was asking him what he thinks attributed to his ambition, he said it was funny. My mother checked the wrong box when she was signing me up for football, and I ended up being in a neighborhood that was totally different from where I lived. And one of my best friends' dad was a big insurance executive. And I'd go to his house and he had a big house, a big pool, and all those other wonderful things. And he said, I thought I want all this. And he said it just made me super ambitious to do well. So those are the fun like little stories I think you hear about in sports, which I love.
Annie, I couldn't agree more. I think so much of it is that exposure, on different levels, good, bad, or, indifferent. It's one of those things where I think having those experiences really can start to shape who you become, whether you realize it at the time or not.
Yes, and I also think the fact that you are on teams with people from all different backgrounds. And the fact that at the end, I love the teamwork. I still love teamwork. I still love working with people. And I think that's probably what drew me to working in live TV production. I loved working with the crew. And I always would tell athletes when I would teach at the NFL or when I was talking to a group, I said, what you will love about broadcasting is that you get to work with a team. And I think that's actually what they miss the most when they retire. And that's what I think is fun because you're working with so many different people. I love people. So to me, it's always fun. All the different types of people you get to meet and all different backgrounds. And the thing also I love about sports is that, for instance, I've worked on the Olympics and I met people from all different countries, different religions. And to me, it was just, I guess I still, to this day, I'm like a little kid because I still love it so much.
Annie, I couldn't agree more. I think it's one of those great connectors as well. As you mentioned, people from different countries. There's something that bonds us around sports, and whether it's our team or their team or however it may be, I think it's one of those things that really can bring us together.
Yes, I grew up in Cleveland, and I remember there weren't many women that were in sports when I started out. And I always found it funny when people made a big deal about it. I was the first female executive producer of a sports radio station. And I remember people calling me and talking to me and telling me about that. And I said, it's so funny to me because, quite honestly, the women I grew up with know more about sports than me. Because when you grow up in Cleveland, you can't help. but be a fan of sports, be involved with sports, because it's such a part of your day-to-day life. I think my brother played on multiple baseball and softball teams. I played softball, I played football, believe it or not, and we bowled. I mean, the sports is just part of your life. So to me, it almost seemed odd because everyone I knew, we'd go to the Browns games. My dad and I go to the Cleveland Indians games, and we'd sit in the oh my gosh, what were those seats called? The bleacher seats. Um, but I just it was the way I connected with my dad too, was through sports. So I just felt like it almost seemed odd to me that they'd make a big deal about it because it seemed odd, like that not everyone was a fan and not everyone was into sports.
Annie, I appreciate that. It's one of those things I always give a shout out to Northeast Ohio. Got to live in Akron for a little while, and it was actually 2016 when the Cavs won it all. So that experience alone will always tie me to Cleveland and that area quite a bit.
Oh, yes. I worked on many Cavaliers games. And there's something special about even, I actually miss the old Indian Stadium. I worked on the movie Babe Ruth in that stadium, and there was just something special about it. But I have such great memories. The Browns games, oh my gosh, the dog pound. How could you not? It was always so much fun. And to this day, so many of my friends that I grew up with are very much fans of sports. So to me, I think it brings people together, like you mentioned. I feel like it was really part of our family activities. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, going on vacation, we go to training camps, and my whole family is pretty much involved with sports. So I highly suggest and recommend it for everyone.
So Annie, what got you into actually becoming going into broadcasting? You mentioned you grew up liking sports, but it's one thing to like sports, and then another thing decided to be a career.
Well, I really got fascinated with sports television. I remember in college reading books about ABC Sports, and because we always had sports television on in our house, and I manifested working at ABC Sports. It's actually a pretty funny story because I literally would write down on, I was a little bit of a nerd. I would always have these index cards with my goals, and one of them was to work for a TV network. Now, I didn't really, to be honest, know it would end up being sports, but ABC Sports came to my college, Cleveland State University, to do the NCAA swimming championships. And I remember thinking, oh, wait a minute, I got to find a way to be able to work on that, even just volunteer. And I became friendly with one of the local newscasters, and she happened to have done an internship. I'd read in her biography she did an internship at ABC Sports. And so, what are the chances that this woman who went to Cleveland State University interned at ABC Sports? And the light bulb went off in my head. Here at ABC Sports, the one and only time they came to Cleveland State was when I was going to school there. And she said, oh, yes, just call someone. I know someone. And she gave me the name and number. And I called him and he said, oh, you can work this weekend on a bowling tournament. And I didn't even care if I got paid. And they said, "Oh no, we're going to pay you a little bit too." And then the bug hit me. So after that, I just started working, and I wanted it so bad, Jeremy. I didn't have a car back then, and I took a Greyhound bus to work the Kentucky Derby. That's how bad I wanted to work on the events. So I would literally take, yeah, if I had to, I'd take the Greyhound bus, and I would just figure out a way to make it work. And then eventually, as time went on, I got better deals and got compensated more. But I got to tell you, I fell in love with it.
I think Annie, and I appreciate that story. I think so much of it is kind of falling in love with the process of the journey of being the sports. Like there's days and people joke, I've been fortunate, much like you, to have some success, but there's some days I kind of miss, that Greyhound bus moment when you're headed to the Kentucky Derby because you're just so excited to actually get that foot in the door, get that first experience or those early moments of experience.
Yes, and I have so many interns. I love to mentor, and I love to mentor because it's my way of giving back because so many people were so good to me. And I felt so lucky to have learned from so many of the greats in sports television. So I really enjoy sharing that information. And that's really was the motivation behind me starting the sports media training business was that I felt like I was so lucky to be around these incredible, brilliant minds, and that if I could pass down that information that they taught me, and I was just this ambitious young girl and willing to do anything. I remember I would volunteer to take people to the airport or, sew on the patches of ABC Sports on the Blazers or whatever I had to do to just be able to be around it and be able to work on it. And I always encourage young people, I say, trust me, even through those things, you learn through osmosis, just being around it. You learn the fact that I would take people to volunteer to take people to the airport, or sometimes I was assigned to do it, but I would ask questions, not try to bug them too much, but I'd ask some questions about their career. And oh, I mean, I wouldn't trade that for the world. And I'm always a big encourager of people interning or doing whatever they have to do to get, just to be around it because I put myself through college, and of course that's tough. I was working a bunch of jobs, everything from, waitress to tour guide at school. But in between, I definitely always interned at the local radio stations, local TV stations, in addition to doing volunteering or not volunteering, but working for ESPN and ABC Sports, CBS Sports, NBC Sports. And I was always just looking for every event I could possibly work. And I would drive. I'd drive to Pittsburgh. I'd drive to Detroit. I'd drive to Columbus. And I was like a little kid in a candy store. It was so much fun.
Annie, I appreciate you sharing that because I tell students that all the time as well. I just got a call a couple days ago with one of the students who I actually spoke at their school, the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design, talking about a separate project we're working on, but their professor felt the need to connect us, and of course, any chance I can just give advice and hey, this is and it's I think it's interesting as for students now to kind of get your perspective. For example, you mentioned you had talked did an interview with Deion Sanders back in the day. It's one of those things I think it gives students hope, but it also shares some real advice and a real opportunity for them to grow and just be a sponge. And as you mentioned, just do as many things as you possibly can.
Yes. And I think it's great that you also share your time and your wisdom with students. And I just think that's what it's about. We just pass that down, try to inspire, try to give people some hope. Because seriously, where I was growing up, I wasn't really sure how I was even going to make it happen. I couldn't afford to go intern in New York or LA, and yet I wanted to work for a network. And that's why I said I manifested because I would think about it so much. And then it was as if I'd think about it so much and I'd visualize it. And then one by one, people came into my life that led me to that goal and that dream. So I always tell people, whatever you want to do, and I always say this to my clients too, if you have a desire in your heart, you're meant to have it. Because I feel like if God gives you that desire, you're meant to have it. And look at you found a way to work in sports too and do something you love. You combined your love of history and sports. And I think that anything is possible.
Annie, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more, and I appreciate it. It's one of those things. It's been a great gift as well to share with others. And as you know, there's people who've supported you either quietly by saying nothing, which gives you that room for positivity, or the ones that are your cheerleaders. And you can't take everyone with you everywhere you go, but it's so great to have support like that as well.
Absolutely. And I have so many wonderful people around me and so many people I'm so grateful for. To this day, I actually have a practice where I always am writing in my journal things I'm grateful for. And that's why I was just saying, just like the little things you could do. And when I was in positions where I had tickets for events, I'd always share those to people, with people or people that I know that couldn't typically go to those kind of events. I was always trying to share whether I was introducing them to someone that I knew that they really looked up to. And I think it's important that we also get to share the gifts that we've been given.
Couldn't agree more, Annie. It's that exposure. I remember at the Cotton Bowl one year we're going. We had packed up, done our event. We had passes to go in, and some of the younger guys hadn't really been into stadiums like that. Hadn't been front row or on the field. I'm like, hey, just come with me. Probably not supposed to do it, but just follow me. and I told him something that I felt was important. Act like you're supposed to be there. And of course, don't be bothering people, but like just soak it in. It was really cool to see, some of those guys get that chance to take the pictures on the ground and you do all that because I've been fortunate. I've done it enough where it's a little, I wouldn't say it's less cool at all. I think it's still just, I still have that little kid feeling in me every once in a while or anytime
That's
I'm
great.
doing it, but it's one of those things that again, just bring that opportunity to others.
It's funny. I have 15-year-old twins, and I took one of their friends to a Hawks game because one of my clients was coaching one of the NBA teams. And I kind of forget because I've been doing this so long. I'm sure you have these moments. And I was talking to Dominique Wilkins, and we were talking about a mutual, I had a client that was friends with him. And so anyway, we're just talking away. And the next day, the little boy that we took with my twins friend, was saying, "Oh my gosh." His mom's like, he was over the moon excited because they got to meet Dominique and take a picture. And I said, "Oh yeah, that's right. We did do that." Because I'm so used to it. And my kids are so used to it because I used to see clients at my house. So they were so used to growing up with NFL players in the house, NBA players. And it was actually funny. One time I was working with Tim Hardaway, the great NBA player, and my son was 6 at the time. And Tim Hardaway was going through my kitchen and my son was eating pizza. And he said, "So what do you do? NFL? What are you, an NFL player, NBA player? What do you do?" And he said, "Oh, an NBA player." And my son said, because, he's really not that tall, when you compare him to a lot of other NBA players. And my son said, "Yeah, I could beat you." And I said, "Tim, just ignore him." Tim got a kick out of it. And so now my son, who is now 15 and 6'6", I said, "That's kind of funny." I said, "Never did I think he'd end up playing basketball." Telling Tim Hardaway he could beat him.
That's amazing. Annie, on everyone's journey, you make a decision. You can go east, you can go west. Can you give me a time where you made a decision and just went for it?
Oh, that's a really good question. Let's see. Well, I tell you what, I wanted to create this area, sports and entertainment. So I left my position as executive producer of the sports radio station. I moved to Los Angeles and I ended up selling this idea to CBS Sports to write a column for them. And then where I would cover athletes that were involved with entertainment and entertainers involved with sports. And at the time, no one was doing it. And then I wrote that same column for ABC Sports. And then I went on a bunch of TV shows, Fox and Friends, things like that. And then I went on a bunch of radio stations. I ended up being on CNBC for a program they used to have early in the evening. And I do these sports entertainment reports. And it was an area that I just totally created that had never been done before. So that was fun. I do think that it is super fun to pivot. I always tell people, you just got to sometimes pivot. I mean, the business is going to change. Think about even now with all the streaming channels. I mean, things are definitely, I think they're changing actually even faster and faster. But just know that you can pivot and feel comfortable in that. It actually makes it, I think, exciting and fun. I love creating. So to me, it's fun.
And Henny, I couldn't agree more. I love the idea of pivoting because I think obviously, as you mentioned, things change, goals change, people change, your own desires change. So it's being willing to pivot. And I did not expect this to be my career when I first started walking in classrooms to teach. Now it's talking to amazing people like you. I still work in museums. I'm fortunate. I joke I get to have it all because I've created avenues that allow for that. So it's being willing to pivot is really important.
I love that. I love the fact that you've been able to combine a lot of your passions. And I
Mhm.
always tell people that you could really create something that you love. I'm getting ready to actually I'm not ready to talk about it just yet, but I'm actually creating some new projects. And to me, it's super fun because I always tell people now, the years ago, I didn't exactly have a grand plan. I went, I worked in production, I worked in PR, I worked in marketing, I was on air, I went to acting school, I worked on films. I was even on a soap opera for a while. I I studied commercial acting. I'm trying to think of all the different things I've done. My goodness. Yeah, I mean, and when I worked in films, I did casting, I did location scouting, and I just said, because I did all those things, writing a column, writing magazine cover stories, that actually helps me for the business I do now because I work with athletes and we talk, we work together on branding, we work together on building this career. Whether it's writing, radio, TV, making sure I help them with the PR and the marketing and the social media. But because of my background and because I've done so many things, I've sold TV show ideas, I've produced TV pilots, radio pilots, all those things help me to help my clients. But at the time, it wasn't as if I had that in my head that I was going to eventually do that, but it all worked out. So I always tell people, just trust. You may not know exactly where you're headed, but just know it's all going to work out.
Annie, I couldn't agree more. It's those building blocks. It's those little pieces that stack. I think those little wins even stack on top of each other to kind of create, I won't even say that finished product, but the current product.
Yes, and my prayer every day is, God, just whatever gifts you gave me, let me help others. So whoever is meant to come in my life and for me to help. And it's really interesting because I have clients of all different backgrounds and all different dreams. And when they tell me, I'll say, okay, you're given that desire for a reason. We're going to make it happen. And I do know at this point in my career because I've media trained CEOs and all kinds of executives and whether it's broadcasters, athletes, I do know and I do trust because I've done so much now that I will know exactly what to do. It's almost as if I get downloads. And so I always say, okay, because I said, if you were meant to come work with me and you came in, we cross paths, we're going to make it happen. And then it's so fun, Jeremy, because it'll start to unfold. And then before I know it, it is unfolded. And I almost get tears in my eyes sometimes because I will have a flashback to where we started and I'll think, wow, we did it. I mean, I'm still like a little kid. And I really, at the end of the day, just love helping people. Even one of my interns was saying the other day, I think you just truly love helping people. And I think you actually are way happier for them than you ever are for yourself. And that's really, I'm probably like you, a teacher at heart or a coach at heart. And I always said if I was a guy, I probably would have been a football coach just because of my uncle was such an influence on me. And I just love helping people. It's almost as if when I'm with them, I could feel their soul. And I know that they were given these gifts for a reason. And it makes me so happy and brings me so much joy when I could help them bring that out and share it with the world.
Annie,
And to me, it's
Annie, that's
awesome.
amazing. I think it's so true, though. I completely agree. It feels so good to help people to see them. That's why I think I love producing other people's podcasts. I enjoy my own because I get to share people's stories and help them along their journeys. But I really get excited when seeing their podcast grow from someone who's terrified of public speaking to now one of them, top 10%. Another one's well on her way to do that. And it's an incredibly good feeling, I think.
Absolutely. And that's what kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier in the conversation. It makes you feel so good to be able to share what gifts you've been given or what people have taught you with others. And I think it's what we're all here to do.
Agree more. So, title of the podcast, Into the Unknown, as we end this. What are you working on now, and where can people learn more about what you do?
Well, I am continuing to expand my business. Such a passion of mine still after all these years. So, still doing the media training athletes, broadcasters. I'm actually getting ready to launch a program for local sportscasters, which will be super fun. And still doing PR for a lot of different types of clients and still a talent agent, which I love so much. And they could find information about me on my website. That's probably the best way to find information. Annie H. Hoffman, that's ANNIE H. Hoffman. And also on social media, I'm this Annie H. Hoffman on everything.
It's always great when you can lock in those usernames.
And I actually recommend that to all my clients. You want to have the same across the board.
It makes life a lot easier, trust me.
I think I think that we're inundated with so much content and so much information that the easier you make it and the cleaner, it's It's the best.
Couldn't agree more. Well, Annie, I want to say thank you again for taking the time to talk with me. I really appreciated our conversation.
Oh, thank you. And Jeremy, I'm so sorry it took us a while to connect, but I'm so grateful that you reached out to me and for thinking of me. And I really appreciate it.
We'll stay in contact. Talk soon.
Thank you.
That was another fun episode of Into the Unknown. I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen. And if it provides you any value or entertainment, I would love if you shared it with others, liked, subscribed, and really just help the podcast grow. Again, tell a friend, tell a foe, just anyone who might enjoy hearing some stories of people's own journeys and what got them to where they are today. Till next time.